Ping Pong has been around since the late 1800s. The game's official name is table tennis. It's been an Olympic sport since 1988, and today there's a new variety of table tennis on the scene, and you don't need a paddle or a ball to play it. All you need is one of these. So grab your laptop, desktop, whatever it is you use, and get ready to have some fun with Zilch. We're gonna build a table tennis playing robot, but before we do, if you haven't watched this brief introduction to Zilch, go ahead and watch that now. This video will make a ton more sense after watching the brief overview. So, you watched the overview, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to coding, no worries. This is gonna be a lot easier than you think, and you won't even need to leave your browser. So, first off, head over to zilch.dev. So the best way to use this video is to follow along. Pause, replay bits that you need extra time to review, and skip the parts that you don't need to look at. There are chapters below, so let's get started. Over here at zilch.dev, we're gonna press get started. There's table tennis, which is the game that we're gonna be doing today, but there's also other games. There's tic-tac-toe, there's chess, even capture the flag coming soon, so a lot of options, but go ahead and open table tennis. When you get into table tennis, it's immediately going to prompt you to set up a game. The first opponent that we're gonna play is the practice bot, which makes a lot of sense. And then we will create our own bot, and we're brought immediately to this programming language selection screen. Now, if you're new to coding, this might be pretty intimidating. If you are already familiar with one of these languages, just go ahead and pick that. But if this is your first time programming, I would recommend either Python or JavaScript. Both are super popular languages. There are a ton of resources available online to help you out with either of them. And if you want to follow along keystroke for keystroke as we go through the tutorial today, go ahead and pick JavaScript because that's what I'm going to be using. So we will click JavaScript here, and you can pick a bot avatar. And I like this blue avatar. And we will just go with the suggested bot name, Angelic Android. That sounds great. We're gonna be asked to connect your GitHub account. If you have a GitHub account, this is really simple. You just press connect GitHub account and then press authorize. This bot that we're creating will have a actual repository that has its code inside of it, the starter code inside of it on your GitHub. That's what Zilch needs that permission in order to be able to do. Now, if you don't have a GitHub account, the good news is creating one is super easy. We'll just hop over here to a browser that I'm not logged in on. You head over to github.com and click sign up. And the sign up process is actually kind of fun. They've made it interesting. You can type in your email here, press continue. We'll just go with that suggested password, and the username, just pick something that sounds good to you. We'll do Mr. Zilch. We will verify we're a real person and press create account. It'll send us a code to verify our account. Just click skip personalization. That would probably be the easiest thing. And then you have an account, and you can head over and connect your GitHub account to Zilch. So the sign up process, super simple, very quick to go through. Once we're here and we have our bot created and we're all set up, we're logged in, we can press start game. And when we do start the game, it's gonna say, hey, this is a new bot, and it will give us the option to create a code space. Now, if you know anything about Git, you can also just open the GitHub repository here, get the URL, clone it down to your machine, and run everything locally. Feel free to do that if you have the skills. But the easiest way to get started, especially if you're new to coding or if you're using a new language and you don't have the tools already installed on your machine to be able to run that language, is to just press create Codespace. Zilch gives us some more help here. The tutorial mentioned here is this video, so thank you for watching. We're going to skip watching the tutorial, and it gives us a tip for what to do once we open the Codespace. We'll follow up on that in a sec, but we'll just press open Codespace. So Codespaces are a product provided by GitHub, a tool provided by GitHub that allow you to create pre-configured, full-featured development environments in your browser without needing to install anything on your machine. So they're super awesome for getting up and running with new tools that you want to experiment with or new projects that you want to use super quickly without having to muck around with installing a bunch of stuff on your machine. This is the easiest way to begin with Zilch too. So we'll press create Codespace, and the Codespace will take just a second to load. Once it does, I want to give you a quick tour of the code editor. If you already have some experience with coding, this will look pretty familiar, but if you don't, this may look pretty intimidating. There are going to be a ton of features inside of this code editor that you don't understand. There are a ton of features that I don't even use or really understand how they work, and I've been using this code editor, the desktop version of it, since it was first released. It's called VS Code. Let's see, when was VS Code released? That was 2015. So for almost a decade, I've been using this in my line of work, and I still don't understand everything. So don't worry if you don't understand what something does or means. I'm just going to show you the essentials, and you'll learn little by little. One of the most important areas here is the File Explorer on this left-hand side, which just has a list of files and folders. And this is analogous to your system's File Explorer. You can create files here, name them whatever you want. You can create folders as well and drag and drop files into it if you really want. One has your bot's code, which is this file, just some starter code for it, and one has the project README. Now, READMEs are a pretty common feature of a lot of projects out there. They just usually give some basic instructions about how to get started, so they're worth reading or at least skimming. And you have these tabs on top that you can drag around if you want to view different files side by side or all together, or you can close them. The file that we're interested in right now is the bot file. And before we get to even talking about what this code means, we're going to connect our bot to Zilch. It's asking us to run this connect command. So where do we run this? The answer is in the terminal. Now this just opens automatically when you open Codespace, but if for whatever reason this isn't open, you can just come over here to the left-hand side to the menu, press terminal, and you can say new terminal, and that'll open you up right here. Very easy. This is the same thing that you can do on your own machine, by the way. You can open up your terminal application, and it's very similar. A lot of simple programs don't have a user interface that you can interact with by clicking on things in the way that you typically do. There's this whole class of programs that you can only really interact with via the terminal. And this is just such an essential skill that you'll learn as you get into coding. But it's a whole lot easier than you think. You're basically given usually a black box like this and the ability to type in some commands. This is a way to be able to interface with your computer without needing a user interface. So you can just type commands here and your computer will try to run them. There are some built-in commands and some built-in functionality here. Like if you want to create a file, you would say touch, and then this will be hello world.txt. And you can see that all of a sudden we have this hello world.txt file here that we can actually modify and do stuff with. If you want to get rid of that, you can do rm hello world.txt and it will get rid of it. This path over here shows the current directory that we are executing commands from. If you wanted to create that hello world.txt file in a different folder, you would need to navigate to a different folder. So you would do something like cd space ... which would tell the terminal to go up a folder. So now we're not in workspaces / angelic Android, we're just in workspaces, and we could create hello world.txt in there. This is just looking at our project here, so it doesn't look at what's above it, but if we wanted to look at all the files in that directory and see if hello world.txt was actually created, we can do ls, which just stands for list, which just lists out all the files in that folder. So you can see we have our angelic Android folder and we have this hello world.txt file. So we can go ahead and get rid of hello world.txt and go back into angelic Android, cd angelic Android. And if we want to run a certain command, there are some that are global, like these ones that I've been showing you, like this ls. This is available anywhere on your file system. You can just run that wherever. And there are also some commands that are only in the current directory that you're in. So the one that we're going to be using is this connect command. It is right here in our bot directory. It doesn't appear here in the File Explorer because it's not super essential that you need to modify that file, but you can take a look at it if you want to. Regardless, in order to run a file in the current directory, you do // which tells your computer to look in the current directory for what it's going to try to run, and then we can run connect. So side note, if you're on Windows and you're not running in a Codespace, there's a different command you want to run because Windows systems operate a little bit differently than Linux ones, which is what we're using here in our web browser. It's connected to a Linux environment. You would run // connect.cmd. Because these systems operate a little bit differently, this Linux system won't understand that if I run that, and likewise for Windows. But if you're in your Codespace, you just run /connect, so the connect command. And what is this going to do? Well, this is going to establish a connection between this bot and Zilch so that we can actually control the movements of our paddle on this screen. We'll run connect here and it will establish a connection between this bot and Zilch. So let's authorize your bot. Zilch establishes a secure link between your account, your device, and zilch.dev. This ensures Zilch can run and access your code. So we press enter, opens the authorization webpage here. I've already done that before, so it just kicked me back over here. But you may have a screen that comes up asking you to click the green authorize button. So go ahead and do that if that comes up. Now we are authenticated and our bot is online and it's telling us to click start game back at zilch.dev/tabletennis when it comes online. So we're online. Let's hop back over here. Zilch is super helpful again. It says, has your bot come online? If so, close the playbook and click start game. By the way, this playbook here on the right-hand side is a super helpful tool if you want to access any tutorials or different resources. There's continually more and more content being added to it. There's even a Discord server you can hop on if you want some help from people in the community. So now we'll go ahead and press start game and we'll see what happens this time. And we lost to the practice bot, the yellow one here, but this is actually really good because our bot connected successfully and now we can actually start programming. So if we hop back over here to this tab, we can see our bot's code here. I'm not going to go over in detail what every little bit of text means in this file, but I want you to follow along because things will start to make sense as you interact with it yourself. Code is run basically line by line, one instruction after the next. And we'll start here on line 11. Every couple hundred milliseconds, Zilch will ask your bot to make a decision about which way the paddle should move. To do that, you are given both the paddle's position with X and Y coordinates and the ball's position with X and Y coordinates. You are able to return one of 5 directions. You can either do north, south, east, west, or none, and we're returning none currently. If we hop back over here, we'll just give you a visual of what this means. We'll zoom out a little bit. You can see that we have this east side, west side, south side, north side, and you can think about this as just like a normal grid, a normal graph. So we have our 0, 0 point where these lines come together and X increases in this direction, decreases in this direction, Y increases in this direction, Y decreases in this position. So we have the XY coordinates of the ball, the XY coordinates of the paddle, and our job is basically to make sure that our paddle intercepts the ball so that it returns it back over to the other side. Let's hop back over to our code. Before we think too hard about how to actually intercept the ball, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. What we should do is make sure that it's doing what we expect it to do. So how about instead of returning none here, we return north. So I want you to make this change into your code and think for a second, what do you think this is going to do? So make your prediction, and then when you're ready, come back here and we will click play again. You can see our paddle was just moving north. We'll do that one more time. It is just off the screen, just moving north, which that's great. We made a change in our code and what we expected it to do happened. So if you weren't already a programmer, you now officially are. This is a great start. I want to show you what it looks like to have a bug in our code though. Perhaps instead of returning north here, say we made a slight typo and we forgot the H on north. What do you think is going to happen this time? Let's head back over to Zilch and check. We'll go ahead and click play again and we get an oops message. We get an unable to parse move invalid north, expected north, south, east, west, or none. This error message here, these red text that sometimes come up, these are actually really good. These are designed to be helpful so you can know what is wrong with your code. This is the computer helping you out. It's really important to read these carefully to find out what's happening. In this case, the error message is pretty comprehensible. They're not always. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. But here, it's pretty easy to say that, okay, we need to put an H here. And if we make that change, we come back over to our code, we can see that that error message is gone now, which is great. But what happens if we made another typo? But perhaps we added 2 quotation marks here. Now already our editor is giving us a little bit of feedback here. We get this little red squiggly. It's kind of tough to discern from this error message what it actually means, but it's trying its best to point us in the right direction. If we try to play the game, we'll get another error message. This one looks really intimidating because it is so long. It's actually not as bad as you think. It says syntax error, invalid or unexpected token. So it didn't expect there to be 2 quotation marks in a row there. But say you don't know what this means just off of the top of your head, which I wouldn't blame you. The most important thing that you can do as somebody who is wanting to program and learn to code and get better at coding is develop the ability to find answers to your questions. Because even when you're a pro, you're always running into things that you have no idea how to solve. But the good news is you don't have to do it alone, because there are a ton of resources out there on the internet of people that are running into these exact same questions. Entire communities dedicated to helping people out with basic or less than basic issues that you'll be running into when you start coding. So we can just literally take this error here, can press Control C to copy that, and we'll paste that into our browser and just see what happens. And the first thing here comes up with some documentation. It gives us some examples of what type of error happened here. It says what went wrong. It says a specific language construct was expected, but something else was provided. This might be a simple typo. And in this case, we can go back and check our code and be like, yes, there was a simple typo. And the nice thing is it tells us exactly where to look, more or less at least. It says on line 20 here. That's what that :20 means. It's like of this file on line 20. So we can come look at our code. We see on line 20, yes, we have a little red squiggle there. Let's get rid of that and we can actually fix that issue. Another great resource of somewhere that you can go to find answers to your questions is Stack Overflow. This is one of the most popular sites for programmers. If you have a question that you don't know how to solve, you can create an account here, ask the question, people will come and give answers and try to help you out. So this is a great resource as well that you can head to. But more than anything else, typing your questions into the search engine and seeing what comes up is a really good thing to do. And there are just a ton of resources out there, especially with some of these more popular languages like JavaScript and Python that will help you with all the little errors that you're going to run into when you first start coding. Let's make some more extensive changes to our code. We've experimented a little bit with what it looks like to have those bugs. Let's actually try responding to the paddle and the ball's position in an intelligent way. Remember that this is just like a graph, right? North, south, east, west. If the ball is further north than our paddle is, if the Y position is greater than our paddle's Y position, well, it makes sense that we ought to go north to try to hit the ball. And likewise, if the ball is further south than our paddle's Y position, then we should probably go south. That's as easy as heading over here and saying, if the paddle.Y position is less than the ball's Y position, then we can return north, and otherwise else we'll return south. If you're unfamiliar with coding, just copy this over to your code character for character, exactly as I have typed it here. And what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's check it out and let's see. This is great. You can see that our paddle is moving north and south to respond to where the ball is going. So we're able to hit it most of the time, and we actually were able to win. We can go ahead and play the boss bot. Let's up the difficulty, see what happens. Let's go with the medium difficulty boss bot. And we missed the ball in that case. That happened pretty quick, but we can go back here and watch the replay and see what happened at that very end point there. Okay, so this is actually really interesting. If we come and look at exactly what happened here, you can see our paddle's here. Its Y position is going to be greater than the ball's Y position, so it's going to try to head south. And here again, I think you can see that the paddle's Y position is slightly greater than the ball's Y position, so it tries to head south again. But in doing so, it misses the ball. It overshoots the ball because it was only just less than the ball's Y position. In this specific case, it honestly might have made more sense to just return none and to not move at all. And we might have been able to actually hit the ball if we hadn't moved. In order to be able to hit the ball, in this case, we're going to need to add a little bit more logic to our code and say, sure, if the ball is greater than us, we'll move north, and if the ball is less than us, we'll move south. But if we're within a certain distance threshold, if we're really close, then we probably just don't want to move at all and stay in the same position. But exactly what that threshold should be can be a little bit difficult to determine, but we do have tools to be able to find out. You may have been noticing over here on the right-hand side, we are getting a bunch of information about the paddles, X and Y position, and the ball's X and Y position here. And that's because in our code, we're telling it on every move, we're saying, send the X and Y position back over to Zilch and log it out in the bot's terminal right here. And this is actually a really useful tool because we can put almost whatever we want here. Want to find in this scenario what that magic distance between the ball's Y position and the paddle's Y position ought to be in order for us to return none. We can have a variable here. We can say that this is maybe our paddle length. And we don't know exactly what this is going to be. We'll just make it 0 for right now. But basically, if the paddle's Y position minus the ball's Y position, and we take the absolute value of that, is less than the paddle's length divided by 2, and in that case we would want to return none. But what should that paddle length be? For that, it would be useful to find out what this Y difference between the ball and the paddle is. So we can take the ball Y, we can just subtract the paddle Y, which will give us the difference between them. So let's go over and see what changes this makes. And now we're getting some information over here that we want, the Y difference between the paddle and the ball. So let's go just to the replay so we can correlate some of this stuff. We'll go to the very end here. Yeah, we can see the exact same thing happened. Our paddle was just less than the ball, but then it overshot it again. And we can see that go around, it looked like the difference was probably about 0.5. So if we head back over to our bot's code here, perhaps we can say maybe 1.2 here and see what difference this makes to how our paddle responds. And we can even make a message here just to be sure that this is actually working as we want. And we can just say returned none. And we'll get rid of this line because we don't need it. That'll make this message a little bit more obvious in the bot output on the other side. So we'll go ahead, click play again. Oh, and you can see that does return none sometimes. And I think this means that our paddle should not overshoot the ball, or at least not overshoot the ball quite as much as it was doing before. And we still lost. Yeah, that one, it didn't overshoot it that time though. We just came just short of it. So there are still some improvements to make to our code. And this medium boss bot is really tough to beat. But I think that you can beat the bot. If you're just starting out coding, you really just want to experiment. You may not know what every little bit of this means, but what you can do is make some small adjustments to this already working code and be really patient and methodical with it, and you'll start to figure it out. The thing that you need to succeed at coding is problems that motivate you, and this is what Zilch is designed to do. So I hope you have some fun beating the boss bot, and I want to give you one last hint. Think back to middle school algebra. You may have learned of a certain formula. It was y equals mx plus